Okay, we'll get started. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, where we'll be talking about how to submit a successful proposal to the Industry Innovation Partnership Program. And we'll talk all about what that program is and who can apply and how to, of course, be successful. First, just want to hit a few housekeeping items. There is a chat feature on the toolbar on the right-hand side of the screen. And so you can use that to participate in today's session and ask questions to our business development team and our marketing and comms team, who are standing by ready to answer any questions that you might have throughout today's presentation. And any questions that are unanswered, we'll try to get to a few of them as well at the end of the presentation. So if you have anything that comes into your mind, feel free to shoot them a note on the chat, or if you have anything that comes to mind afterwards, send an email to info@cabhi.com and they'll get back to you very quickly. So as I mentioned, today's webinar is all about I2P2, and this is our third time running this very exciting program, which awards up to $500,000 per project to allow innovators and innovative companies to gain the clinical evidence needed to get widespread adoption for their solutions. So that's one of the gaps that we'll be talking about, and we'll walk through kind of how that works and how the program flows. So today's agenda, we'll start off just talking about CABHI, who is the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, and what do? What is the I2P2 program, and why did that come up, and why is it of interest to potentially you? I2P2 program details, some of the dates and some of the key facts about it, who can and who cannot apply. So there's some nuances with some of our other programs, and so we'll talk about eligibility. What kinds of projects are we looking for? Important program dates and frequently asked questions at the end. So we'll start off just talking again about what is CABHI. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, CABHI is a solution accelerator. So our mission is to accelerate the development, validation, commercialization, dissemination, and adoption of innovative products, services, and best practices to support brain health and aging. And so the way that we do that is through these competitive funding programs, where we allow innovators, both from the for-profit and the non-for-profit and academia and clinical side, to come forward with their solutions, and we kind of try to fast cycle them all the way to adoption, to the point where they can be used and benefit older adults or end users, caregivers, etc. So that's our mission. And our vision is a world in which people can age in the setting of their choice, maintaining their cognitive, emotional, and physical well-being, as well as their independence for as long as possible. And so that kind of comes out through our priority themes, of which all of our solutions are related to, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But really, CABHI's role in this spectrum of innovation and aging and healthcare is to take these solutions, to help develop them and to help validate them, but ultimately to get them adopted and get them into practice. So for those of you tuning in today, my assumption is that you have some sort of an innovative product or solution at some stage, and you're looking for us to help you do that, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So we'll get into I2P2 and some of the specifics around it, but first we're just going to show you a quick little whiteboard animation video, and this should work.
Every year, 30,000 new products are introduced into the market, and 95% of them fail. This is partially because innovators don't have clinical validation with an end-user population. CABHI's Industry Innovation Partnership Program invites companies to apply for up to $500,000 to test their products and gain the evidence needed for widespread commercialization. In addition to funding, successful companies will also receive the opportunity to select their ideal trial site and clinical research. Apply now for I2P2 and obtain the evidence that you need for adoption.
So if the voice sounded familiar in that video, that's because it was me. But yeah, that's just a crash course in the program that gives you a sense of what we're trying to do for companies that are entering this program. So let's talk a little bit more specifics now. So as it mentioned, up to $500,000 per project in funding to support the innovation in a way that it is able to obtain validation from an end user population. And so one of the ways that we do that is we can introduce you to a a health provider, some sort of long-term care center or a hospital or a community care agency, et cetera, that has kind of the key to the population where you need that evidence. And so we'll actually make that introduction for you if you're successful in the program. So you'll go through all the vetting and evaluation, and on the other end, you'll come out with the opportunity to have that $500,000 co-investment and to meet and to work with these senior care organizations within CABHI's network, which ranges to over 100 across both Canada and the United States. And so we'll cover up to 50% of the project costs with CABHI funding, and the other half, which can come either in the form of cash or in-kind contributions, will be brought by the vendor, so by you, by the innovator. And so it's a 50-50% cost sharing arrangement. All the costs are attributable to the actual trial that is taking place. So these are costs that would ultimately most likely be incurred by the site that you're partnering with the site that we broker that relationship with. They would be incurring these costs, and we would be splitting the bill ultimately of this project. So yeah, the CABHI funding is fed directly to the trial site for this program, and we can broker that relationship if required. So that's an important point to note, is that some of you may have already warm connections to one or more trial sites that are eligible for this program. And if that's the case, that's fine, and you don't have to use our brokering process. But we do offer that as an opportunity. So at the end, after you've gone through the first stage application and you've been vetted and you've gone through the pitch competition, which we'll talk about, then again, that is the opportunity where we'll sit down with you. We'll open up our big book of trial sites, our big catalog, and you can let us know what kind of organization it would be ideal to help drive adoption of your solution. And that can be a number of large or small organizations with different types of patient populations and different types of resources or technical infrastructure to best suit the needs of the type of solution that you're trying to have validated. And so a total of $3 million is available in funding for this program. So that would be a minimum of 6 projects that we would be funding. But based on historical data and the way that this has gone in the first couple of times that we've run the program, it's more likely to be about 10 to 12. So there's a real great opportunity here to apply with the amount of funding that you think you're going to need. And obviously that might change a little bit as we get closer to the actual application stage, where you meet with your partner and you come up with a project budget. But there's a total of $3 million available in funding. So anywhere from 6 to 12 projects would be selected. So now we'll talk a little bit about eligibility. So who are we looking for in this program? For-profit companies. So these are innovators from the for-profit side that are looking to partner with healthcare organizations. But for this call, we're not actually looking to the healthcare organizations for the solutions. We're looking to companies. So this excludes non-for-profits and charitable organizations, agencies, individual entrepreneurs or inventors. So you have to have some sort of a formalized incorporated structure around you. Researchers, academics, and clinicians, again, not eligible. Incubators, investment funds, all not for this program in particular. So that's the who, and now let's talk a little bit about the what. So these are just some of the types of projects that we are looking for as far as what could be an eligible type of solution to have validated. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that these are a maximum of 15-month projects. So that excludes a lot of the other types of ineligible projects, things like pharmaceuticals or super invasive medical devices, which would need a lot longer of a clinical period to validate. But we're looking for things that are non-invasive medical devices, some emerging technologies, virtual reality, things like that, wellness and digital health solutions, healthcare delivery practices. So again, it doesn't have to be a technological solution. This could be something that is a practice or a process-based innovation and changing the way that things are done in the context of a care setting. Therapeutic approaches, practitioner, caregiver training and support. So those are some of the eligible projects. And ineligible pharmaceuticals, invasive medical devices, basic fundamental research. So anything that's just asking a general research question without a direct applicability to some sort of solution, we're not interested in. It's important work, but that's not the purpose of this particular program. Projects with primarily academic deliverables, the same. Projects that don't fit into one of the 4 themes, and we'll talk about what those themes are. And projects not readily transferable to a point of care application. So Again, CABHI's wheelhouse is in the area of adoption. We're looking for solutions to bring to populations that need it, and we're looking to do that now, right? So we're looking for that validation to occur in a real setting with real people to provide real feedback so that this can make the best case for adoption. So what kind of projects qualify? So this is where we get into our 4 themes, and so we do a challenge set refresh, or we get new themes kind of every year, or sometimes we keep a couple of them, and just depending on what the market is looking for. So these solution challenge sets are based on a lot of primary data collection from our partners, our partner network, different organizations that we would maybe make a trial brokering relationship for you with, as well as other organizations that do similar work or work with a similar population to CABHI. So they identify these as the 4 most pressing challenges within the senior care sector. So the first one is aging in place. This is obviously a big one. Solutions that enable older adults with dementia to maximize their independence and age in the most appropriate setting of their choice. So in contrast to aging at home, this is a lot broader than that. We're looking for solutions that maybe keep people at home if that's the most appropriate care setting, but perhaps allow them to age in assisted living for longer before moving to long-term care. So things like that. Caregiver support, so both informal and formal caregivers is an important point to make here. We're looking for both professionals like personal support workers, nurses, members of a geriatric outreach program, as well as the informal caregivers. So, and oftentimes adult children or a partner or spouse who's caring for someone with cognitive decline. Care coordination and navigation is the third theme. So this is a newer one this year, and that's looking for solutions that assist older adults, caregivers, and providers with the means of better coordinating, navigating, and utilizing some of the resources that are available in the health system. And so you can imagine that in the complex environment of the health system, it's difficult to always know what the best path of care is. And so we're looking for solutions that can make that a more streamlined process, making it more readily available, making it more accessible. How do we make that more accessible, especially for populations that maybe don't have the same access to care that people in larger urban centers would? So that's what that solution speaks to. And finally, cognitive health. So solutions improving brain or cognitive health, as well as identifying or assessing adults at risk of dementia or cognitive impairment as kind of a first step to prevention. And so cognitive health is kind of a special category as well, because that's the common link between all 4 of these themes is that dementia focus. So we are looking for solutions that speak to each one of these individually, but ultimately we're looking for solutions that are related to dementia as well as one individual theme. So it all kind of has a cognitive framing to it. So now talking a little bit about the type of projects as far as the stage that we're looking for. So projects must be at an advanced stage of development in order to participate in this program. So at the time that you apply, and with respect to the time that you would actually begin the project, and the projects would begin sometime around August, you would have to have a device or a product or solution that is ready to be used at the time that you're applying. So that is making sure that it has all of the certifications, that it's built, things like that. If there's maybe a couple of pending regulatory approvals or clinical approvals that you need in order to bring it to a specific population, that's fine. That can take place sometime between the application and the actual beginning of the trial. But most of these things, and certainly the big things, classification, certifications, all need to be in place before the actual trial takes place. And so that excludes, of course, research ethics board approval, which is something that can be obtained a little bit later down the road, closer to the project start, and once you know that you've been awarded, but most of these things need to be in place. So the basic principles of the concept have been observed and reported, so you have some preliminary evidence either through your own work, or there is kind of evidence out there within the research sphere that supports the validity of your device or solution, and that there's something that you can point to as a clinically validated study of some sort that proves that this is not just a novel brand new solution with no academic backing behind it. There has to be at least some data set that you can point to. Validation has been achieved in a simulated environment, so that's the step before going to an actual human trial. The prototype is ready for demonstration and testing in an appropriate operational environment, so that's all the technical infrastructure is ready, all of the build has taken place, all the development work, it's ready to be drag and dropped into any particular setting to be used. With some, I'll say with the caveat, with some preparation required, depending on the nature of the solution. And so if you're looking to bring it to a new population, you've often worked with those with mild cognitive impairment, and now you're bringing it to a full-blown dementia or Alzheimer's population, then there might be some tweaking or some logistics kind of to take place in the background in order to prepare it for that different population. And so that's okay. That can take up a small, insignificant part of the project, but the majority of the groundwork has to be in place before you can begin the study. And so we need to see that the device itself has been built and that there's something that you can show us and demonstrate before we would be able to evaluate your project. So speaking of evaluation, there are 5 criteria that our projects are selected by, and I'll pull them up real quick. Each one is worth 1/5, so 20% by each. And our projects are selected on the basis of these 5 things. So strategic alignment, how well does the solution tie into CABHI's mission and our vision which we talked about, as well as the 4 priority themes, which we just mentioned. So how tied to CABHI's mandate is this? Is it something that's kind of a peripheral to dementia, or is it something that addresses it directly? That would be how you would score highly in that category. The quality of the solution, so if you take a look at the form, which we'll pull up in just a minute, there's a lot of questions that asks about maybe any background evidence that you have to support your claims that this could be a disruptive innovation in the healthcare system. So what type of validation or information do you already have access to that you can speak to? Anecdotal evidence, anything to make us, to make the evaluating team realize that this is a very efficacious solution that can be brought into an older adult population and immediate benefit can be realized. The market opportunity and commercial merit, so that's both how much demand is there from an end user perspective as well as from a customer perspective, which might not necessarily be the same things. If you're selling at an institution level, if that's the ideal state, is that you're marketing your product B2B directly to a hospital or a long-term care center. Why is it that the solution that you're bringing or the problem that you're solving, why is that a salient problem for someone who would be the ultimate decision maker, and why does that not exist in the market? Project goals, what are you trying to accomplish? And it's not just doing an academic study that will show how amazing and how effective your solution is. We're looking more for projects that will lead directly to adoption. So have you done some data finding and found that your ideal target customers are actually looking for the type of evidence that you're hoping to generate out of this project? So don't just do a project for the sake of getting evidence. Make sure that it feeds directly into what your customers would want to know. Company and team experience. And so this is just where we look at the type of experience and the type of qualifications you have on your team. If you're doing a very heavily tech AI-based project, you would want to have the right type of developers and technical staff, but you would also want to bring that, that clinical side. Where do you draw your patient perspectives from? How is the older adult perspective been brought into the co-design process of coming up with the solution, right? So making sure that you've got obviously your internal team, but maybe reference other people as well that you draw insights from to strengthen your application and to show that you have a well-rounded team with lots of experience. So just to break up between what the CABHI role in the project would be and the vendor role, there's things that we can support you with, and there's things that we leave to the vendor and the trial site to take on as part of the project. So we will, if you want us to, identify and broker your trial partner site. So again, if you come to the end, you've been successful and you already have a trial site or trial partner that you're willing to work with and that's willing to work with you, that's great. If you don't, we will open up our catalog and you can pick essentially whatever one seems the most beneficial to you to do a trial at, and we will make that contact, we'll make that relationship. And if it's something that they see the benefit from, which oftentimes they're very excited to try these new types of solutions, then we'll make that connection, and then the project will take place. We'll also identify project champions and resources. So we'll help you to work on that through our trial site brokering process. So that's at the trial site, we'll identify people that can take on the actual project themselves. Assistance with pilot and research design, post-trial evaluation. And so this is a new point for this time around. We'll actually be offering to the winners a scientific officer from CABHI's network to actually help with the methodology creation, working in parallel with the trial site that you've identified. And so this scientific officer is someone with a range of knowledge in coming up with methodologies and establishing clinical trial methodology, and they can help to put together a solid project plan that would help to create the most evidence. So the next thing is assistance with project implementation and management. So you'll have either myself or one of my colleagues in the innovation office assigned to you, where you'll be able to interface with them, and if there's any difficulties on the logistics end of things, we provide support. We try to make sure that our projects stay on track, and we'll be checking in with you monthly to see if there's ways that we can help. And communication support to profile and share lessons learned with the healthcare community. So CABHI's got a very broad network across a lot of different facets of the health system, and so we use that platform to help spread the message about your work and your innovation and what it's doing and what it's accomplishing. And so we try to share the story of all of our projects. At some point, we'll do a spotlight, and we'll make sure that helps get the name out there a little bit. The things that the vendor would be in charge of is to work with CABHI to implement the trial and to validate the claim benefits. So really, it's between the vendor and the trial site. You're driving the bus on the trial. We're actually just taking a side role and a support role to make sure that things are moving forward. You'll collaborate with the trial partner to provide us with updates and reports. So there's a few documents that you would return to us on a quarterly basis. Nothing too burdensome, but just a few things to keep us with an idea of how things are progressing. You'll be responsible for allocating and committing project resources, including staff time. So that could come towards your 50% in-kind contribution of the project. And lastly, you'll be providing matching funds and paying a 10% administrative fee. So looking at the program kind of like a product, right, or a service that we are offering out to the marketplace. There is that the 10% is the 10% of the project cost, and that's what we charge to make it all possible. And so that includes making that brokered relationship with the trial site, any marketing and communication support that we provide throughout the project management support, and there's actually a whole well of other resources that we offer to you once you are a CABHI funded project, and that includes things like being able to use our space for events, being able to get in front of a member or members of our seniors advisory panel to get focus group support. So there's a whole suite of services that we would also open up to you once you are a funded project. And so that 10% admin fee is what opens the door to all of those services. So now talking about how to apply. So you can visit our website and you'll see a big flashy button that tells you to apply for ICP2, and that will link you directly to the form where you can fill out and go through all of the different fields and save your form, and I'll show you that in just a second. But before you go to the form, you want to read the entire information package top to bottom, and you want to make sure that this is a program that speaks to you and that this is the right stage for you and your company, and where things are at right now is getting this robust clinical validation. And so you're going to want to make sure that everything is on par with what your company objectives are. So submitting an application by March 12th at 5 p.m. So that's the deadline for this time, and that's just the online application. And if you're shortlisted, and this is also new, you'll be presenting on our pitch day or pitch days, of which there are 3 from April 18th, 19th, and 20th. We'll be having people either in person or joining via Skype or video conference, and they will be presenting 10-minute presentations, and this is the final stage of selection if you're invited after the application. you'll be presenting to a panel of about 4 judges from industry and clinical and research backgrounds, as well as lived experience background. You'll be presenting your innovation and what you want to achieve, and we'll be looking for the best and brightest solutions through that pitch process, which we will then make a guarantee, an award of funding, and then that will ultimately lead to us making the introductions with the trial sites and getting the project started. So submitting an expression of interest. So this is the application form, and that's the first step in all this. And so I'll just pull that up so you can see what this all looks like here. So this is the form, the Industry Innovation Partnership Program application. So you can scroll through. It says 47 questions. It sounds daunting. It's really not that long, because as soon as you put in a title, then that's one question done. So every field is considered a question. And so you want to walk through title, applicant information, solution description, and you'll notice that all of these sections correspond with one of the 5 evaluation categories. So each of these sections is worth 20%. We ask for very brief at this stage overviews of things like your business plan, what is it about your solution that makes it innovative, why is there a demand for this in the market, things like that. We'll ask you to give us an idea, and again, this can change, of how much funding you're looking for, and this can go up to $500,000, or this is the vendor cash contribution, but the requested funding can be up to $500,000. And we'll also just ask that you confirm your availability for pitch day. So this will be, again, from 18th to the 20th. And once you've been confirmed to be on the short list, you can let us know which day works best for you, and we can schedule that off. But I would make a point of everyone who's on the webinar right now of just marking down that April 18th to 20th to make sure that that's marked down your calendar, because if all things go well, we hope to be seeing you on those days. So again, just to reiterate the deadlines, March 12th is the final date to apply to submit that form that we just looked at. And we'll be inviting our shortlisted applicants to pitch day on March 19th, so just a week later. Pitch day will take place about a month after that, so you'll have about a month to put together all of your materials for pitch day, which will provide you with more information at the time. And successful applicants will be notified again a week later. So one of the keys to this program and this cycle is that we wanted it to happen really fast. And so we're actually pushing for a very ambitious project start date of August 2018. And so that's with everything happening between now and project start date would be August 1st, 2018. And that would be the beginning of a 15-month project where you'll be validating and gaining the evidence you need to get adoption. So now I think we have a few minutes left, and then we'll end near the half hour, and we'll just get to a couple of questions. And I've just got a couple that have come through, have been passed to me from the communications marketing team that we'll get into, maybe answer 3 of these. So first question, we've got Alex from Norway. Hi, Alex. So does CABHI take any IP in the solution, or depending on the investment, any ownership of the innovation? So it's a good question. To clarify, CABHI takes no IP in any of its solutions that we support. Our return on investment is essentially the economic returns or the health outcomes that are generated by your product or solution. So we want to see it get adopted. We want to see it work. We want to disseminate it. We want to talk about the findings, but we don't want any ownership of the intellectual property. That remains entirely with the innovator, with the owner, however that is already structured. We don't get involved with IP. Another question, Doug from Ottawa is asking, can the funds be used to make refinements to the device or solution? So that's a good question. Again, up to 20% is the answer. So up to 20% of the project can be used, or some of the funds can be used to prepare the product rather for the trial that you're trying to do. So if there's some sort of alteration you need to make based on the care context or based on the population that you're working with, then those are alterations that can be made as part of the project. But again, it has to be a relatively insignificant, less than 20% of the actual project. Last question we have time for, Susan from Vancouver, British Columbia asks, can we trial our solution at a site in the US? So this is also a good question. As far as eligibility for geographic considerations, that's open to anyone in the world. So any innovator from anywhere in the world can apply. And the only restriction is making sure that one of the trial sites or the innovator, so one member of the project, is in Canada. So the vendor can be in Canada with one trial site in Canada and one in the US, or with both in the US as long as the vendor's in Canada, or the vendor could be from Norway and have one trial site in the US and one trial site in Canada. So as long as there's one trial site, we allow up to a maximum of 2 trial sites. As long as there's one that any of the parties within the project are part of a Canadian organization, then that satisfies the eligibility requirements for this program. So I think we're just at time. That's all of the questions that we'll be able to get to for today. But thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any more questions that you think of today or in the future before the deadline, shoot us an email at info@cabhi.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And you can check out our website for any of the information that I skimmed over today and learn a little bit more about whether the opportunity is good for where your company is at. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we provide updates. And one other thing that I'll mention is that given that this is the 3rd time we're running the program, we're expecting, we're looking for a real flavor of kind of cognitive health and dementia. And so for those of you who have stuck on the webinar and have listened through it the whole way, making that connection, even if you're not a directly related innovation to cognitive health, there has to be some sort of implication to dementia within your application for it to be a real strong submission. So I would just consider that you can make that connection through a number of different lines of logic. But I would just make sure that kind of dementia flavor is prevalent within your application to be successful. So there's just a little hint for those of you who stuck around to the end. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to reading through all of your applications and wish you the best of luck through the application process.